Welcome to Rauta's Black Metal Reviews. This time we go to self-financed solo project from Sweden, from a young guy in the business. Gyves is the name of the band, as far as I can, try to imagine the given pronunciation, and this is My Death Sentiment, a debut album by this solo project. As you can see, this is still a nice packaging, even if it's self-financed. Nothing here reeks of demo-ish output, but instead just very much like comparable to a lot of those pro-made label released items out there. Comes with a real booklet as well, including lyrics, band photos or solo project photos, and all the necessary stuff that you might consider necessary when getting a physical copy. Now the only downside is that this is CDR. However, my very picky old CD player from Cambridge Audio had no problem playing it. Sometimes it has problems with certain CDRs, but anyway. So let's go for Gyves website, or more like a Metal Archive site for this given project. It started in Sweden as late as 2023. It's only 2 years ago, and according to Metal Archives, it was death metal early, whatever it means, because there was only this single before this debut album from 2024, and later melodic atmospheric black metal. Now, this is obviously black metal, so I don't know if this single could have been something different, or is it just someone thinking this more like a death metal thing. Anyhow, in my opinion, this is purely black metal, but more from the softer side of things. It's a rather lengthy opening album, given that it's indeed solo project and released already 2024. And if you consider that this was in July 2024 and the band was founded in 2023, very quickly, very hurried release in that sense. Comes with 9 tracks and 53 minutes and then some, meaning the songs are not exactly short and sweet, the exception being the intro here. Inside you will find a release, which is technically speaking more like atmospheric black metal with a lot of keyboards. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it kind of showcases that the musician itself is very, very much, handling the keyboards part particularly well. I mean, they're the kind of dominating instrument here in so many ways, but obviously metal music wouldn't be metal music if it was about keyboards, not the guitar riffs and so on. So obviously you do have also guitar riffs which are, then again, in the black metal department. So when you combine these two main factors here, you kind of get the rough idea. So it's keyboard led black metal going atmospheric. Sometimes melodic, sometimes more fast tempo and aggressive, but still black metal nonetheless. Now, the downside of being a solo project is rather typical. It comes with the drum machine, and I'll be honest with it, it's probably the most annoying part on this album. It's not like super annoying, let's get that fact straight, but never been a fan of drum machine made of a metal release, because they tend to be overly just so synthesizer-like. It's almost kind of gives you kind of a plastic feeling, and that is unfortunately very much emphasized with this particular release as well, especially when the drum mixing is very much on the front. It's to a degree where it kind of starts, stealing the focus rather than giving that to keyboards or guitar riffs instead. But I guess over time you get used to it and it becomes part of the whole deal here. But yeah, real drums would be so much better with this kind of music. Another thing worth mentioning is the guitar sound, which is not exactly strong and punchy, more like you probably did it at the rehearsal place or at home, like it tends to be with a lot of bedroom black metal projects. And these two elements especially together gives this kind of the feeling, it's very, very demo-ish. The problem is not so much with the songwriting, which is, having ups and downs like a very, very typical album. But I'm gonna say this much. Sometimes these songs are way too lengthy given the ingredients. I am talking about the riffs, the keyboard parts, and so on. Meaning a little bit more focus, more compact maybe, would have done some good to these songs. So when you have these production elements which are not exactly worth praising, and you have these songwriting things, writing riffs and all, and combining them together, yeah, it gives this a rather demo-ish feeling. For a demo, this is definitely a decent. For a debut album, I don't know. It feels like it's just too much on one go, because when you have these minor problems here and there, it just gives a little bit like too much. If this would have been, say, something like 20, maximum of 30 minutes of music, maybe it wouldn't have gotten so much under your skin in a way that you kind of start focusing on these minor problems, which are not big, but more and more aware of them as you go on, especially when you give it multiple spins. So what I am thinking here is that instead of doing a demo first would have been a good idea rather than going full album straight from the beginning. And of course, when it's one-man project, there is nobody really to challenge whatever takes there are. But I get it. Some people are more like, these lone wolves in a way. So rather than going for a full band, they just do everything themselves, and sometimes it's a blessing and sometimes it's a curse. What would really do good for this band, what this band would really need is, in my opinion, a real drummer, and maybe someone to reflect these songs to, saying like, okay, do I really need to do that stuff or that? But some kind of a producing in a way. But apart from these minor things, this is definitely a potential case. I really like how the atmosphere is here, and there are lots of good riffs. And I think the keyboard parts are probably the most interesting on this album, because it clearly shows that there is more experience with that versus, programming drums, for instance. And the vocals, they're pretty good for a first, release by a new band. So all in all, it's pretty nice. Would have been better as a demo with less songs and more compact, but goes beyond the point. If you are into atmospheric black metal with keyboards and all that stuff, yeah, give it a go. You will find links included in the description box. But I would rather, in big picture, say this needs to mature a little bit, like more focus on what needs to be included in the songs and cut the extra fat away, trimming it down a little bit, and then add the real drums, better bunchy guitar, and voila, there it is. Now, this is the debut album, so obviously up to you, give it a go or give it not. We'll look forward to hear from this band in the future as well. Now, off you go. Bye.